Okay, good. That will include Janine's cat. All right, everybody. Well, thank you for being here. And I think I am going to go ahead and turn to Christina, who has an exciting funding update about OU2.
All right. Yeah, so as I mentioned, I'm the remedial project manager for Operable Unit 2, and we're all very happy today because we get to announce that OU2 is receiving a big amount of funding. So we're getting $4.7 million over the next couple of years to kickstart the remedial investigation again. And we just heard this news late last week and have been super excited to share it with you. As we know that it's a super important part of the site and important to us at EPA and the community as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how that came about and share what it means for the site characterization. And then Beth is going to go into more detail about what that exactly means for a sampling timeline during her presentation. And we can also answer any questions at this time about the funding as well. I think we had mentioned previously in other CAG meetings that we had been kind of eyeing the bipartisan infrastructure law funding, knowing that it was going to be providing $3.5 billion to Superfund. So on the project management side of things, we kind of were looking at what tasks that we could potentially push up given different amounts of BIL, bipartisan infrastructure law funding. So we were working with our contracting officer to see what might be involved on the contracting side. We were doing strategic planning and working with budgeting and ended up making a big ask to headquarters and being able to see if we could push up our remedial investigation, which was slated to restart in 2024 up until this year. So we made this ask to headquarters to get this accelerated funding, and we're very grateful that the administration at EPA is very focused on disproportionately impacted communities and providing investment in communities that have perhaps traditionally been underinvested in. So they ended up granting our request, and we're grateful that we have this money for the next couple of years to be able to shift up the remedial investigation from 2024 to this year, 2022. So I know on the community's perspective, you guys have all been very much engaged and have really advocated and helped push and move this part of the site forward. So we really appreciate your engagement and helping us move the site forward and wrap it into reuse and turn it back into beneficial land for the community. So I'm very excited for this next chapter. I'm going to be getting a lot more busy. The whole team is going to be getting a lot more busy. We'll be wrapping up OU1 sampling and cleanup, and then OU2 will be really ramping up the next couple of years. But we're hoping to get on the ground this summer. And like I said, shift up our timeline by 2 years. So Beth is going to kind of go into more detail about what that exactly means for what kind of sampling we're doing and when. But I can answer any questions that folks have at this time about the funding or how any other questions related to OU2.
Terry, I see your hand is up. Go ahead.
Yeah, and it's less of a question and more of a thank you, Christina. I'll tell you what, thank you so much. You hit the nail on the head. We've been all particularly worried about OU2 lagging behind the work that we were doing on OU1. And so this is exactly what we had asked for. So thank you guys so much for helping us carry that and getting it accomplished. So now tell us everything we need to do to help roll up the sleeves to get OU2 moving and catch up with OU1. But very exciting. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, it's great. It's great, exciting news in this kind of dismal year of a lot of negative things going on. So it makes me happy.
Well, and I want to make sure that we also thank our congressional representatives. Without our congressional representatives and our senators, I know this wouldn't have happened either, because they're the ones that also push through this bipartisan piece of national legislation. So my thanks and my hat goes off to them as well for helping. To borrow a phrase, it takes a village. It takes all of us to get these things done. So pretty exciting that we got that announcement in this move.
Here,
Yeah,
here.
thank you.
Does anyone have any other comments or questions? I see lots of positive emojis. Lexi, did you want to chime in? I saw you just, no, okay.
No, just excited. I think that's really awesome, especially from the revitalization standpoint. I know that everybody on the CSRP that Dorina will update later is was really concerned as well around like what's going on with OU2 and how we can make sure that that area is ready for the revitalization plans that we have for it. So really excited, everybody. That's awesome.
And this is Beth. I just want to pop in and say OU2 is Operable Unit 2, the former smelter area, not the residential part of the site. I know we say like OU1 and OU2 a lot. OU1 is the residential section of the site and OU2 is the former smelter area that we are still studying. And you'll hear a lot more about that this evening, but just wanted to add that in for folks. I know most of us know that, but I don't know, it could be sleepy on this Tuesday evening.
Thank you, Beth. Always helpful to say it. They're on the side of explaining. Okay, well, obviously this news will inform the rest of what we talk about tonight, including the update on what this means for OU2 in the timeline. So we'll be hearing more and have an opportunity to dig into it. I think before we do that, Beth, you were going to give an update on what's happening with OU1, the residential area, in terms of sampling and cleanup. So go ahead.
All right, awesome. So we are, like we've talked about, we're doing great on the residential sampling and cleanup. We are getting really close on soil sampling. We've gotten 93% of properties done, and I'm really excited about that number. I have heard at other residential Superfund sites that it's really hard to get past like 90 or 95% done, just since we do have to have homeowner consent. So that's an exciting number for me. It means we're getting close, but we are also getting some of those folks that are not eager to participate. So that's something I'll talk a little bit more about later. So we're at 93% for soil sampling, 63% for dust sampling. So that has really ramped up because it was paused during COVID. Soil cleanups, again, are really high. We're at 82% for soil cleanups. And then that indoor dust cleanups, we're almost to 50%. We've got about 47% done on those, and we are speeding those up. So I know previously folks had asked about, and we've been trying to get closer to a last call timeline. So we did attach that to the most recent CAG email. And I know some folks are here who weren't on that email list. So if you didn't get that like chart, you can definitely reach out to myself, Ryan, pretty much anyone in the group and just say that you need that information and one of us will be able to get that to you. But I wanted to highlight a couple of things. Let me pull that up. We are expecting the soil timeline to finish up before the dust timeline. Again, dust was paused with COVID and that set us back a bit. We are still expecting to be done with that in 2023, but we're not expecting to finish it this year. So we're expecting soil sampling will wrap up in August of this year and soil cleanup will wrap up in September. So we're getting very close to that. Thanks, Ryan, for putting that in the chat as well. We're getting really close to wrapping up soil. So we are like making that push. I think everyone was aware we did a town hall with Mayor Gravisar, so we are continuing to do some of those different outreach strategies that are listed in this chart that I'm happy to send anyone so you can see what's coming up for that. And then on the dust side of things, that looks like it's going to be in May of next year. We'll end the sampling and then we will finish the cleanup of indoor dust in September of 2023. So that's just lagging a little bit after the soil cleanup since we are so much closer on soil sampling and cleanup. So I wanted to share that with folks because we are really excited and we know that word of mouth is really helpful in most communities. And I know especially here when people hear about things and are talking about it. So we're excited to have more concrete deadlines and be able to get that message out and really start on those last call activities. With that, I did want to highlight the telephone town hall that we had in December with Mayor Gravisar. We received a lot of phone calls. I think that was the most that I've ever seen an influx of phone calls like that. I think it was a really effective event. We had 9 people directly request follow-ups from the town hall. And then there was an article that came out afterward where they said, hey, you really should probably sign up and mention some of the consequences. So I think that also aided the effort. So it resulted in 37 calls between December 9th and January, what was it? January 5th when I calculated that. So that was like the most calls that I've seen in such a short time frame, which was really great. We did get 6 consent for accesses for sampling, which is awesome, and then 2 for cleanup. So I was really excited to see those numbers. I think that just speaks to the success of that event, and that's something we want to take into account as we do move forward with what communication works. So I think that was showing that that works and resulted in some more success in some of the other tools we've been using. And I know last time as well, this is my last section, and then I'll pause for questions and comments. Some folks were asking about the refusals, and I know that's one, it's really a tough nut to crack. I know Sabrina uses that phrase. We struggle with the boundary of what we as the federal government can do. We want to provide free sampling and cleanup, but we need homeowner consent. And when homeowners are not interested or are not responsive, that puts us in a tough position where we can't move forward with that. So a lot of what we have heard and what the property coordinators have heard are that some folks are just not very concerned. There are some elderly folks who don't see that they have had negative health effects and have lived in this house for many years. They grew up there and don't have as much worry about the contamination. So that's, I know, one big factor for folks. Another thing is often if people have other things that are taking up a lot of space in their lives, if they have health issues or family things, job issues, like just other life factors that take up time are not, they don't have the bandwidth necessarily to participate in it. It's just one more thing that they're like, oh, I don't have time or effort to engage with that. So I think that's definitely a factor that limits people. Sometimes it is like, it's a hassle, there are sentimental items, and just like the process of managing people with that. I know as well, lawns, that's one thing. People don't want to start over with a new lawn. It's understandable. They really value the yard they have. And I think also logically, not really wanting strangers in their house. They have a lot of things in their house and don't want to have to move a lot of that stuff around. And that I think one that I've heard similar to the health issues is that folks are planning to die in their house and haven't ever had health issues. So they just don't see the value in doing it. And then there's also the subset that we just haven't been able to hear any response from, that they have not responded to any of the outreach, phone calls, left materials at the house, that we just can't reach them, and we don't know who the homeowner is. So I think those are the main overarching categories. And in my last call document, we do have our like branching outreach of how we are planning to target those properties, or all the properties that haven't participated. So the telephone town hall, I think, is one of the examples of how we hope to have those phone calls that go directly to those properties, and all the folks who have not participated. We expect to have media interviews, op-eds, door-to-door outreach, because I know that has been effective in like leaving materials there, having those conversations, having some information in the newspaper. I think the telephone town hall also showed us that local media tends to be more effective than like an EPA press release. So that's something that we want to utilize. And then as we get further down the line, we're hoping to have some formal letters, possibly a formal letter from the city that goes to those properties. And then when we're really, really close to like being done and not being able to do it anymore, we're going to have a formal letter from EPA that says, here are the consequences, here's what you need to know. So those are the strategies that we have right now. Another thing I don't think is on here that we tossed around in a previous meeting is recording a resident public service announcement, which I think would be a great effort. I haven't put the wheels in motion for that yet, but I think it would be helpful if we have some folks who've lived there and have gotten a cleanup done who can speak to the benefits of it, get that local perspective. So that's something I haven't put on here because I haven't officially started on it yet, but it's something we'd like to engage in. So that's my long rambling update, but I will pause and see if we have any questions or comments on that.
Well, I will first say, while people are figuring out if they have questions, just thank you for following up, Beth, because I know people did ask about this at the November meeting. It's great to hear a bit more. Derek, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to say that, Beth, that sounds like a really fantastic update. Thank you very much for your detailed update. As far as, going to the public and, doing a resident testimony or plea for help, if you will. I really think that's a great idea. And I think that if you do a combination of, local leaders as well as, somebody else that are members of one of the, I don't want to say popular, but, members of the more well-known organizations in town, I guess is a better word to say. So I think that would be a good idea as well. So that's just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thanks, Derek. I appreciate that. And I might reach out to you afterward to see if you have any specific, and if anyone, I guess, has specific organizations or like folks that you think would be a really good fit. I have like a couple people that I've thought of asking. I already asked one person. And so if you have ideas, I think that would help me to know who to reach out to on that.
Beth, can people put those ideas in the chat if they have them during this meeting?
Yes, they sure
Okay.
can. And I will put my contact info in the chat in case folks don't have it.
Perfect.
And I see Terry has his hand. Yeah.
Go ahead, Terry.
Beth, thank you for that, and thanks for sending that outline out to us, because along with your explanation helps a ton for us to understand it. I'm a little concerned about the hard cutoff issues. I thought that even with the activity that we were trying to do, that if somebody came in the door after the fact, they still had the potential for going through the process. So in other words, while we're still on the ground doing cleanup and everything like that, that there was still a potential to get them plugged in. Is that not true?
I think, Terry, that's a great question. That is one of my concerns. Sabrina, I'm wondering if I can turn to you a little for this, because I think these are our cutoffs based on the contractual dates of when we're able to do these things. So,
Yeah,
Sabrina, are you able to speak more?
Yeah, that is one of the troublesome realities that we've got, is that we've got contract deadlines that some of these things need to fit into and won't carry over into future years. And some of that is not just on the EPA side, but also on the Corps of Engineers with their cleanup contractor. And
Okay,
if there's an end date, a period of performance, they can't extend those. They'd have to put things out for rebid, and it's thousands and thousands of dollars and months of time.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Really want to keep on this and get as many people wrapped in the next year that we possibly can, next few months.
No, and the difficulty of it is, Sabrina, thank you for that, because I understand how bureaucracy works, but I'm hoping that we can do a little exploratory of what happens if we are successful in bringing people in after these cutoff dates, because literally that's what we've been telling folks, is that when is the last time you can get your property involved and cleaned up. We've been saying you can't wait, you can't wait, you can't wait, but what we've all talked about repeatedly is the opportunity still is available as long as EPA's in town and on the ground. And these cutoff dates are not consistent with that. So I guess what I would love to do is to talk about, I understand the cutoff dates for the contracts and that sort of thing, both with you and with Corps of Engineers. But what I would love to do is connect in anybody who is late arrivers, because we know it happens at every site, and we know it will happen here. Any chance of a cleanup opportunity, literally cleaning up the final properties that come in before EPA literally packs its bags and leaves town. So if we could talk about that, I would appreciate it, because this is the first time I've seen that hard cutoff of August this year for like soil sampling. I knew that you had stuff out under contract, but I had always understood that there were still other opportunities. So definitely would like to talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, Terry. And I'll just jump in for a little bit. I think that is a concern, that like if we get a whole slew of people who come in after the cutoff date, that's tough. And I think that is partially maybe my error in messaging, that we've said, oh, this is an opportunity until EPA leaves town, because it's hard for, when we didn't have the deadlines, we couldn't say, oh, because we might finish with soil sampling first. And so I think this is our deadline of when EPA will be in town for those specific things, is that we have those contractual opportunities and we can look at it internally. Again, I'm not the contract person, so I don't want to make any promises that like, yes, for sure, we'll be able to do that. But I definitely hear the concern. I echo that. And I want us to get this message out through all of those methods, and any methods y'all have to share that wide. That way people know we've been telling them they can't wait, but like now we have real deadlines. And I think that often helps people get moving. So hopefully that will help alleviate some of this or kind of prevent it from becoming a large scale issue.
No, and knowing how procrastinators work, they'll hear that hard date, and then we'll still have people knocking on the door the next day. And so, yeah, anything that we can do to talk about how we might be able to take care of those folks would be really helpful. And the other issue is, I don't know if this message will sell or not, Beth, but you know, we've been hearing from some of the senior citizens from the very first day we brought up this issue, that they said that they've been living here forever and it didn't seem to affect their health. And so they weren't interested, even though they'd have family members and stand up and talk about all the people that died of various cancer-related kind of illnesses and that sort of thing. Would the economic side make any sense? I know the senior citizen, a lot of times, last thing they're thinking about is selling their house, but every one of them are thinking about what happens to their house and their relatives after they pass away. And if they don't do something, they're handing a problem to their children. And I don't know if there's a way to get that message out, targeted to some of these folks that are resistant because they're saying they don't see the issue or not. But is that something you guys have already talked about?
I think it's something that I'm smiling because I have heard that message, and I think we've given it in like specific instances. It isn't something I've rolled out in like my broad scale messages like, hey, if you die, this is going to be an issue for your kids. That's not a message that I broadly roll out in that instance. But when people say it to like a property coordinator or to me, we let them know that this would be a burden to their family, that there is a big financial cost. And so we have mentioned that in those like instances, in those like one-on-one conversations. And I think there have been a couple folks who that has changed their mind. And there have also been folks who say, that's great, I don't care. So it's kind of hit or miss, but it's one of the messages that we have in our arsenal.
Okay, there are people who figure when I'm gone, it's somebody else's problem. So,
well, and I wonder if on the PSAs recorded by local residents and leaders, it might make sense to include that as one of the messages from somebody who can speak to that.
Okay,
That's a good idea.
I know that you're trying everything, and I love the fact that you're pounding here. And I just thinking that more and more creative ways to try to get to folks is what we're all going to have to be figured out. Thank you.
Sabrina, go ahead. And then I'm wondering if anyone has any other questions.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was something that people were very responsive to on the telephone call with the mayor. And I just thought that he had a really nice and tactful way that he carried that message forward for people. So I guess, you know, I'm hoping that we can do more of that, you know, that sort of thing to continue to reach out to people. And maybe it would require a little bit, you know, more one-on-one contact for some of those households. We can try to you know, get that very specific information from the sampling and cleanup contractors. It may be more on the sampling side. But either way, I think using those local resources are critical.
No, and I think that's fine. I think that's what we kind of brought up. I think Derek kind of brought up earlier as Mayor Gradisar is a known individual, a trusted individual. And so utilizing folks like him and his picture and voice can carry along a lot of these messages. And there's other folks in the community that might be able to assist with that too. But I just want to make sure that we're doing scorched earth to try to get everybody signed up. I know that it's not likely, but I just want to do everything we can.
I totally agree, Terry. That is the goal. We'd love to get to 100%. I don't know how close we'll get, but we want to get as close as we can.
Thank you, Beth. Any other final comments or suggestions, questions on this topic? Okay.
Just what Terry described, has already happened at other sites where we've had residents that didn't want sampling or cleanup pass away, and their heirs had to pay $25,000 to get the property cleaned up.
And that's the horror story that I think that we got to find a way to get that out.
Yeah.
Possibly bluntly, because we have already had folks who have passed away in this neighborhood, and their heirs are stuck with property that are beautiful on the surface, but they can't sell them. And so using experiences in other jurisdictions, I think, is going to be pretty helpful as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Ryan, I wanted to pitch in real quick. I forgot one note that I wanted to mention. It wasn't about residential things, but I wanted to toss that in there when we get a chance, but I wanted to open it for any other questions and comments.
I think, go ahead, Beth. I'm not
Okay.
seeing any other hands. Go ahead.
All right, great. So this is just news for the whole community advisory group. We at EPA have a new regional administrator. They're a political appointee. I think y'all are familiar with the process. You've talked to previous regional administrators. So we have a new one. Her name is Casey Becker, and she is really interested in meeting with the community advisory group here at Colorado Smelter. I proposed, or my initial thought was that it might be helpful for her to meet with the steering committee. That way she can meet with that small, intimate group of engaged residents and discuss the project with them. So I wanted to raise that to everyone and kind of get a pulse and see if my instincts were correct, or if you'd prefer for her to come to the broader CAG and just kind of give some remarks and participate for a little bit there. So I was curious what folks think about that.
So particularly for those of you on the steering committee and others, any comments on that? Do you like the idea of having her come to the smaller steering committee venue and having a smaller conversation, and/or would you prefer to see her come to a CAG meeting?
I guess my thought is to kind of open the dialogue with her. I don't have a problem with having an initial conversation with Representative Becker, which is what I'm used to calling her, starting with the steering committee. But I would definitely encourage her to ultimately establish that relationship with the entire CAG, because we've done that in the past with previous directors, and it's really worked pretty well. But starting the process through the steering committee, I think that's fine, because she can kind of get a feel for who we are and what kind of questions we ask and how difficult we are before she has to walk into the fire.
Any others want to weigh in on that? It sounds
And I
like
guess I should change that from Representative Becker to Speaker Becker. She was Speaker of the House for a while.
sounds like others may be agnostic, not hearing from you all. Okay.
Well, I saw
Sounds
you
good
on
to me.
mute. Do you have any thoughts?
Okay, thanks, Eric.
It's fine with, sounds like a good idea. I think the sooner she gets to know the community and the community advisory group, the better.
Great, thanks, Velma. Thanks, Eric.
I as well. Yeah, I think it would be really nice for all of us to be able to get together like that. I know that when the previous Region 8 director visited, it was a really good meeting, and it benefited everybody. As far as having the steering committee first, I don't think that would hurt anything, for sure.
Okay, great.
All right,
Beth, is
thanks
that what
everyone.
you- Okay,
That's what I needed. Derek, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I agree with Paul. I think it's very beneficial for to hear from all the different organizations that are involved, all the cooks in the salami factory, so to speak. Because I think a lot of us overlap some of our goals and our what we're working towards, and I think it's important for it to be heard that to get an overall picture.
Yeah, thank you.
okay, good. All right, well, thanks everyone. Oh, Sabrina, go ahead.
Yeah, I had just a quick addition there. Typically, when we are able to come down to the community, have face-to-face meetings, it a day or two of meeting with the CAG steering committee, CAG members, other community groups, elected officials, and you know, that could be something that we could look at, trying to figure that into a day or two of virtual meetings in lieu of being able to be on the ground in Pueblo.
Okay, so stay tuned, it sounds like, and thank you. Okay, so I just am going to move us along to the next topic to stay on track here. But so you all may remember in November, there was a discussion about how, or at least a quick update on how the CDC had recently changed its blood lead reference level. And there were a couple of questions about that. And so I think EPA wanted to give a quick update or just sort of clarification about that and see if there are any remaining questions. And so I think Charlie Partridge and Jason Fritz, you all were gonna speak to that. And I think if you're sharing visuals, which I think you might be, maybe just sort of let folks know who are not on the screen what that is, and we can make those available.
Yeah, sure, Ryan. Thank you. I don't see Charlie here tonight. He's had some illness in his family, so I hope everything's going well. But I'd be happy to talk with you folks. Oh, no, it's the same as going on everywhere, right? It's just another day. Yeah, I'll be happy to share. We have one slide. Oh, okay. They changed the interface. Give me a second to navigate to it. It's always fun when Zoom updates things. So you should be able to see my slide, hopefully in a moment.
We can see it, Jason.
Awesome. Thank you. And you still see it, or do you see the presentation mode, Christina?
It's not in presentation mode, but I think it's good enough for purposes.
Yeah, looks good.
Okay, good enough. Thank you. Appreciate it. And so, yeah, we were going to just talk very briefly, I guess, continuing the conversation, as Ryan said, that we started a couple of months ago back in November. And I'm not sure if I'll see hands or anything if anyone has questions. So Ryan or Christina or Beth, if you guys could just let people feel free to interrupt me as I'm going through this. I want this to be kind of informal. I mean, sometimes with our background in science and research, sometimes we just have what we call death by PowerPoints, you know, a stack of slides that we just run through pell-mell. I don't want that here. I mean, I had the opportunity, thankfully, to spend some time with my family over the holidays, go back home, talk to my dad, who's a retired engineer. My sister is a soybean biologist. My stepmother is a retired nurse. And, you know, talking with my family, it's a little bit nice to have a little bit more, perhaps informal approach when trying to discuss topics that are really important, like blood lead, and really interesting. And I try to get into the technical details, but then understand that folks with different backgrounds, like my family, I just want a different kind of conversation. So I didn't talk with my family about blood lead levels at Pueblo, but I like to have this discussion here kind of in that mindset, right? So I'm sharing a slide. It's one slide. If you don't see the slide, that's okay. I'm going to talk through them. It's really just a bunch of kind of sorted, organized text. And I'll just speak left through right if you're looking at it at home and you're joined by phone, or if you're looking at the slide I'm sharing the same way. So I'll just start talking about the CDC blood lead reference value, kind of what that is, and then move through the EPA national target blood lead levels, and then the Colorado Smelter identified target blood lead levels. So from left to right. And again, really informal conversation. If folks have questions, please, Ryan, Beth, or Christina, just let me know. Feel free to interrupt, and I'll happily engage. So the CDC blood lead reference value, very importantly, different from the other values that we're talking about, is not a regulatory value. It's not based on health effects. I don't know if you guys see my camera because I can only see my slide right now. So I may be moving my hands around because I tend to talk with my hands a lot. But really what the CDC blood lead reference value is an updated estimate of the US population of children ages 1 to 5. And what they do is they, every so often, look at the information. In this case, they looked at information collected between 2015 and 2018 in these routine, unbiased, systematic sampling approaches that the CDC does of the US population, blood levels, urine levels. Sometimes they looked at children's blood. And if you imagine, I'm drawing with my hands a normal distribution, some people call it a bell curve. If you looked at that distribution, the CDC looks way at the high end for the people that have the highest, the 2.5% of the population that has of children that have the highest blood lead levels, and at that 2.5%, they draw a line down and they see it's about 3.5 micrograms per deciliter. On the screen, it's 3.5 mu G over DL. And so that's what that CDC blood lead reference value is. It's a description of the US population of children's blood lead levels, specifically looking at those who had the highest 2.5% in that population distribution. And the reason they do that is to describe in the population this high tail so that folks, if they have possible concerns about lead in the home, in their children, if they have families, or perhaps if they're starting to think about planning a family, they can go in, get a blood test, and then they can have discussions with their physician or their other healthcare provider or public health folks based on that result. But that doesn't mean if you have a higher blood lead level than 3.5 that you necessarily are going to have any adverse health effects. And it doesn't necessarily mean if you're just under 3.5 that no health effect will occur at all. Again, the CDC and others have said that there's such things like there's no safe level of lead, of blood lead. And what that means is that as scientists, as public health professionals, for lead, there's no specific level that we can point to and say that everyone, including the most susceptible people in the population, will be absolutely at no risk of adverse health effects. As scientists, we can't say that. And it comes up a lot for lead, and it's important, but it's not unusual. In the EPA, we take the same approach to understanding the potential risks from carcinogens, like arsenic. For many carcinogens that interact with your DNA, you could also say equally truthfully that there is no safe level of exposure. There's just the level that we think we can get to that's safe enough. So ideally, in an ideal world, we'd like to get to low or undetectable levels of lead and carcinogens, but lead is present in our environment. So what we try to do is try to understand the interaction between blood lead and potential health effects, and make decisions for specific Superfund activities based on that understanding. So now I'm moving from the left-hand side of the slide towards the middle. On my slide, it looks kind of green. People like my wife and sister tell me that I'm not great with colors, so it's the middle column of the slide. If you're looking at the slide, it says EPA national target blood lead level. And that right now is higher. It's 10 micrograms per deciliter. But again, this is a target blood lead level, not a statistic based on the population distribution. So this level is based on an understanding of its impact with regard to potential health effects. And the goal for this EPA national target blood level, which was established in the late 90s, I think it was around 1998. The goal still is to limit the chance that a child's blood lead level won't exceed 10 micrograms per deciliter, that there's a 5% chance. So instead of describing a population and saying that, the highest 2.5 or whatever percent have higher than this level, we're doing a probabilistic or a chance-based analysis saying we will accept no more than 5% chance that this could happen in our very specific population. And the purpose of determining this kind of target lead level that EPA does is specifically to reduce the risk of health effects following exposure to lead contaminated media, usually soil and dust. So stepping back just a second, I mentioned that the CDC blood lead reference value, which is 3.5 micrograms per deciliter, was provided kind of as a tool to start a discussion about potential exposures. If you have perhaps higher than that blood lead level from the CDC, you can talk to your physician, your public health professional about evaluating sources of potential lead in your home. Now, going to the EPA national target blood lead level, the purpose of that is really to start identifying in the environment where potential releases may have occurred that led to lead being potentially too high. So we start going from that very designed as a kind of physician and community individual tool, the CDC blood lead reference value, move into the EPA's national target blood lead level being based on health effects, and specifically for something like the Superfund activity, to start as a screening approach, narrowing down in communities where releases may have led to excess levels of lead in the environment. So now I'm moving from the left or from the center portion of the slide to the right-hand side, which is some shade of red or magenta, perhaps burgundy. Again, I'm not great with colors, but it's the right-hand side of the slide. And that's the slide, that's the column that kind of starts Colorado Smelter target blood lead level, 6.24 micrograms per deciliter. And this is very similar to the middle column, right? It's based on EPA's national approaches. So this is also based on health effects, but instead of being kind of a general community idea base, it's very specifically tailored to Colorado Smelter and the local community. It takes site-specific factors like background into account, and it also takes into account the very site-specific understanding of how much lead gets absorbed into your system if you were to ingest some from soil or dust. And the purpose of this, much like the purpose of EPA's national target blood lead level, is to decrease the risk of health effects in children, specifically from exposure to lead contamination, which originated from the Colorado Smelter site. And in this case, for OU1, very specifically contamination in outdoor soils and indoor dusts. So this value is very specifically to look at how to protect the community from the potential, from the release that occurred from Colorado Smelter smelting activities to this one kind of source. Stepping back to kind of compare these three values, on the right-hand side, we have health effect-based regulatory action levels or remedial remediation goals, PRGs, a blood lead level of 6.24 micrograms per deciliter, specifically to protect people in the Colorado Smelter community from exposure to lead released by the Colorado Smelter site that's contaminating soils and dusts. Compare that to the left-hand side, that blood lead reference value from CDC of 3.5 is not based on health effects. It's just provided to start a conversation between an individual family and their healthcare provider or their public health kind of authority. So again, it is confusing because the values released by different agencies for very different purposes look like they could be very similar. I mean, they have the same units, their blood lead values, but really the intent and the purpose and the basis of the derivation of these values is vastly different. And just to, I've said this several times, but just to reiterate it again, on the left-hand side, the CDC's blood lead reference value is a population statistic. It describes the highest fraction, 2.5% of the population of US children and their blood lead value. It doesn't mean these children that have this blood lead value or higher are at necessarily increased risk or experience health effects. And it doesn't mean that folks below this value will not experience health effects from lead. Again, we don't disagree that there's no safe level of lead, but that means we just can't identify a specific level like 3.5, 5, or 10 that would protect everyone, including the most susceptible people. What we do on the right-hand side for Colorado Smelter is we have a value that's specifically linked to probabilistic chance of adverse health effects. And that value is based on site-specific considerations like the local environment, the background levels of lead naturally present in the soil, and the amount of blood of lead that may get absorbed into your body, very specifically from the site, from that Colorado Smelter release. So that's kind of the information, the points I wanted to cover. It is a lot of information, and some of it's pretty similar, so we have to talk about the specific details, and it gets pretty technical. And I'm trying to step outside of my toxicologist, scientist mind hat or mindset a little bit, and just think more of a real world impact based kind of discussion with everyone tonight. So
thank you, Jason.
Based on that, let me stop sharing so I could see comments or hands or everyone's faces or not. But yeah, thank you. Happy to try to answer any questions if folks have thoughts or concerns. I see a couple of hands up. Maybe Velma's first. Go ahead, Ryan. Sorry, I didn't want to take over.
No, that's great. So yeah, Velma and then Terry, and then others can put your hands up if you'd like to be in the queue.
Hi. Thanks, Jason. I appreciate the definitions that you've given. And it's sort of an ongoing, as you indicated, sort of an ongoing difficulty among various agencies and the ways that they use their numeric values. I am, and I'm one of the ones who's been questioning all along these values, the values, both in general terms, EPA's, excuse me, 10 micrograms value, as well as the 6.24. And I guess there are a couple of things that I find troubling in the presentation, and maybe it's just me, but the fact that the CDC screening standard is based on, is determined based on statistical findings of lead sampling in the United States, does not necessarily mean that, or rather than a specific targeted health effect, is there for a number of reasons. And one of the things that I believe it's extraordinarily important to be clear about is the fact that it's not targeted to a specific health effect. And therefore, folks are fond of saying it's not a health-based standard. Does not necessarily mean that health is irrelevant. If health was irrelevant to that standard, we wouldn't be having a standard. CDC wouldn't be bothering with it if health was irrelevant. The fact of the matter is that the health effects of lead are so varied and so wide and found at such extraordinarily low levels, literally as low as, it has been said that as low as it can be detected in blood, health effects have been found. As low as less than half of CDC screening standard of 1.5 micrograms per deciliter, the long-term kidney function effects can be found. So one thing that troubles me a little bit is making a distinction saying, well, their standard isn't health-based, but ours is. And I wouldn't want, I know you don't intend to give the impression that means that their standard is somehow irrelevant to health or over the top, or that EPA is the only agency that has standards based on health effects. But the way it was phrased could leave that impression. The fact of the matter is that CDC says that there's no safe level, not just because we can't detect the lowest possible level, or because there isn't any way to guarantee that absolute safety for anybody. That's not what they're saying. What they're saying is, as low as we've been able to test, we're finding adverse effects. And so therefore, there is no specifically safe level. And when we're talking about health effects, we're talking in people, and we're talking children, we're talking neurologic effects and kidney effects, for example, affecting blood pressure and so forth into the adult age groups. So I just wanted to be really clear that those of us who are concerned that EPA's selected levels, certainly if there's a child with a 6 or 10 range blood lead level, that child is going to be in the doctor's office. That child is going to be subject to a significant health workup and at high risk for serious long-term problems. So I would certainly hope that we are targeting our cleanups to avoid that level of adverse effect. I think that I and others continue to be concerned that the cleanup levels, that the blood lead level set for the cleanup is higher than it should be. I think there's a basis for that concern. I'm not sure what I'm not sure about is what can be done about it at this point. And I did have one other question, which was, oh, I'm sorry, my brain has gone blank. The one thing I didn't make a note on, I knew I could go on too long about this subject, so I made notes.
Well, we can come back to you, Velma, when you remember it.
If I think about it, I'll put it in chat.
Yeah, just let us know when you remember. We'll come back to you.
Thank you, Velma.
Thank you, Velma. Go ahead, Terry.
I guess my main issue, Jason, thank you for explaining that. But I have to tell you, I still fail to see the logical relevance to the CDC level if it does not go into the responsibility of trying to figure out safe levels and cleaning levels. And you know, I'm sure there must be a real good reason, but it seems like we're all a little bit critical of the CDC these days. So I guess maybe I'll jump in that line. And then I guess the other, I guess the question that I have that spins out of that is, so bottom line is they've adjusted their level based on what appears to be a percentage of average that of the amount of lead that's showing up in children's blood. So that has no impact whatsoever in the levels that the EPA is setting nationally and the levels that we're setting here for this site. Is that correct or is that incorrect?
Oh, thank you, Terry. I appreciate the thoughts and the question, the opportunity to clarify. Yeah, if I gave the impression that the CD's guidance is of no value, then I didn't mean to say that. I absolutely value our colleagues at ATSCR, which is part of CDC, as well as big mothership at CDC as well. I will say that CDC releasing and updating a blood lead reference value does not directly affect the site-specific activities, but it absolutely is information that EPA, big national EPA, takes into consideration also the data that CDC used when setting national blood lead target levels. So whereas we on the site and in the Superfund program in the regions won't take CDC value and replace EPA value with it, at the national level, that information is vital to the ongoing discussion of how to revise EPA's national target level, which I mentioned was from the late 90s at 10, which I don't want to speak for everyone I work with, but I'll certainly say that many of us would feel 10 is probably higher than it should be. And that discussion is all centered around lowering it. Most of the debate is to what level it should be lowered. And the CDC's information is very useful in that discussion at a national level, but it is not something that we just take apple to apple and try to replace, because it's not. It is useful, it's informative, but it's not the same as the values that we've applied for Superfund site cleanups here at Colorado Smelter. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and you didn't say that it wasn't relevant. I did.
Okay.
Based on what I'm trying to understand from the logic. So, but and then that led me to the same question is we had understood that there was a general consensus that the 10 level was too high on a national level, and that that's just general consensus is too high. But the debate is going on what level it should be set at.
Yeah.
Is that process going to conclude anytime soon? Do you have any idea?
If I had a crystal ball, Terry. Yeah. So
a bunch of scientists arguing in the same room, you could talk until doomsday. I hear you.
Yeah, no, I got you. And honestly, I thought, based on discussions I was hearing last summer, I thought we would have updated guidance by now. The most recent information I've seen is that guidance is expected to be updated sometime this year.
Okay. And that actually took us to where we were going with it, Jason, is if that ultimately triggers a reduction in the targeted level that is set for this site, what is going to be the impact of that on properties that we've already gone in and tested and cleaned? And so that's obviously one of our concerns. And the thought, at least initially from some of us, was that if the targeted level for this site is lowered, then we may have to go back in and redo some properties, which would then mess up the hard stop dates that we'd heard about earlier in the presentation about when we stop our testing and when we stop our cleanup.
Sure. I see Sabrina's raised her hand and she doesn't want me to say anything, so I will happily cede that question to Sabrina or Christina.
Oops. What happened to my video here? I don't know what happened. Well, what I wanted to add is because our clean soil requirements are so low and we're doing whole yard cleanups, we won't have to go back and revisit those yards. So that's a good thing.
So you're saying that we've cleaned below that 6, what is it, whatever it is.
No, so the blood lead level doesn't relate to what our soil in parts per million cleanup level is.
Okay. Oh,
even if the blood lead level lowers and the soil cleanup level lowers, it's still going to be higher than our clean soil requirements are. So
we've undershot on that.
Oh, way under 20 parts per million or lower, I believe.
Okay, thank you.
Velma, I see your hand is up, and Terry, I'm assuming your hand is up from before, but Velma, did you remember your other question or comment?
Yes, I did. Thank you. My other question was, I assume that the 5%, the less than 5% chance of reaching 10 micrograms is over a time period. Or is that a point value that at any one point, any one child in the neighborhood has a 5% chance of being at 10 micrograms? Or is that like, if the child said, it was explained to us at one point that the 6.24 value was a value if a child sat in a contaminated part of the yard for 28 years and played in that spot, they would get to that blood lead level. So I guess what I'm asking is that 5% or whatever it is for the 6.24 a point value at any one point in time, or is that an over a time period? And I'm not being very articulate about how I'm asking the question.
No, that's perfectly fine. And Velma, I understand what you're getting at. And so there's two parts to my answer. The first part is that Charlie is absolutely the expert on our model, and he'd be able to answer that precisely. So my answer is going to be somewhat vague, and I'll defer to Charlie. Maybe you can address that specifically, maybe in a written comment or on our next meeting. But very generally, that 5% is a cumulative probability statistic based on a child aged between 1 and 5. So it's definitely not 28 years. But I'm not sure, based on my understanding of the model, it bins year by year. So I'm not sure if it considers 5% within any one of those year bins, or it's 5% cumulative for a child who ages through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years within this site. So it's not as specific an answer to your question as I would like, because again, Charlie is the expert, and I don't have that level of expertise with the model itself. So I'm sorry to defer that question specifically, but hopefully it gives you a little bit of comfort that it's not a 28-year averaging period. It is a 5% cumulative probability statistic. I'm not sure of the exact averaging period.
And we can note that question for Charlie. Velma, thank you for bringing it up.
Okay. So I talked a lot. If there's other questions, folks can feel free to reach out, or Ryan, I'll turn it back over to you. I don't want to push too far off our schedule.
Yeah, no, exactly. We're a little behind, and I do want to make sure we have enough time. But So if folks have things that they'd like further clarification about, please feel free to put it in the chat. We'll follow up with Velma's question in the meantime. And Jason, thank you. Thanks for the follow-up on that topic. Okay, so the next sort of big part of this meeting is, and I know we had thought maybe of having about half an hour for this, Beth, is to follow up with the first part of the presentation that you all had prepared in November about kind of the big picture for OU2 sampling. And I know this is something that had come up in the CAG steering committee as a suggestion for helping people understand where things are going, what EPA's goal is and what its sort of big picture methodology is and why for characterizing contamination at OU2. And so Beth, I'm just going to pass it to you with a sort of a note that maybe we'll try to wrap up with the presentation and questions and comments by just after in like 20 minutes, if we can shorten it a little bit.
Yeah, I was thinking that I can try to cruise through. I think the main thing that I want to focus on is the timeline. So let me share my screen. Sorry, I need to rearrange my screens here.
And while you're doing that, I'll just say that I posted a minute ago in the chat the CAG website. So everyone should have that website. Please bookmark it if you want to on your computers, but this presentation is already posted there. If you go to the website, you scroll down and there's a link to presentations and you can find them at the most recent presentations at the top. So this is there. So again, if you're not on the Zoom and you're on the phone, just you can type in Colorado Smelter CAG into Google and it'll pull up the CAG website and you'll find it there. So with that, go ahead, Beth. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Ryan. So we are just going on to the part 2 of the presentation we did in November. And the main thing I want to focus on is the timeline, but I will kind of pause for questions throughout as we did in the last presentation. That way we can have some discussion as we go through here. So just summarizing what we talked about in November. We talked about the Superfund process overview, what information we're looking for in remedial investigations, how community input has a role in that, and in the future, how we collect data, how that data is used. This was a pretty technically minded presentation on the types of data we need, the constraints that we have, trying to clarify more about that. And then this presentation is looking at previously what we've done at Operable Unit 2 or the former smelter area, and then what's to come for Operable Unit 2, and then having some open discussion, questions, answers, things like that. So this is a reminder of what we've looked at previously. This is what we call the Superfund remedial process diagram. It shows the whole lifeline of a Superfund site. And just to emphasize again, today in this presentation, I'm talking about Operable Unit 2. That is just the former smelter section of the site. The residential section of the site, known as Operable Unit 1, is on a separate timeline where with the residential part of the site, we're doing cleanup and characterization simultaneously. But with the former smelter site or Operable Unit 2, we are currently in characterization and then we're going to move on ahead. So just wanted to focus that the whole Superfund site is just broken into these 2 categories, which is why we're talking about it that way. So we're currently in characterization. And then we wanted to summarize what we've done already for Operable Unit 2. We have developed a site strategy. This looks at the goals for the project, the priorities, the data needs. We already talked about this a bit, what data we need for Operable Unit 2 to make decisions about the information that we need, what we need to collect to then jump into the feasibility part of the Superfund process. We then created data quality objectives. These were aligned in the quality assurance project plan, that's the acronym down here, which established performance criteria so that we understand the data we need to collect, it's quality data. We then acquired a contractor. So part of that, this is the whole contracting world that I am not an expert in, but we created statements of work, cost proposals, looked at different vendors, and then eventually acquired a contract. That contractor is PWT. They are the same contractor that we've used for the residential part of the site, and they also did work on Operable Unit 2. So this was in the past when we had acquired them for Operable Unit 2. They conducted initial investigations in accordance with the quality assurance project plan. This was under that contract for Operable Unit 2, what they were able to do in this former smelter area. So they collected samples for surface water, pore water, sediments, superficial soils. I think this has been the data that you already saw. I think Christina presented this in September, but so this is the data that we have right now. And then kind of skipping ahead, we are continuing to update the conceptual site model again, that's down here on the bottom. And that's looking at the different pathways for how contamination could affect people, animals, plants, anything. That also helps us to refine our project goals, our priorities, our data needs. So it kind of feeds into each other and is this evolving model. Then I think folks are familiar with this when PWT, our contractor, their contract ended. And so they were not able to do any other residential sampling or sampling at the former smelter area. So that was last year. Then we received our annual budget and we revisited the site strategy with the new budget, prioritized OU1. I think you all remember this painful conversation last year when we talked about the timeline for Operable Unit 2, how it was delayed based on the funding that we had. Now we're jumping forward. This is more present day, what we're looking at. We have acquired PWT as a contractor again, and they are both able to do work on Operable Unit 1 and Operable Unit 2. So they have, again, the statement of work, cost proposals, vendors, all of the process that goes into getting a contractor. And sorry, I feel like I'm talking quickly, but I wanted to get through these to get us to the timeline. So then this is more current day stuff where we're looking at shifting some of the Operable Unit 2 work to the internal resources that we were able to leverage. This was again when we were talking about the delays in OU2 budget, and we wanted to share what we can do internally. The screening level ecological risk assessment is being done internally with EPA staff. We're looking at surface water, groundwater interactions. I know you all heard from Sarah Teschner, who's a hydrogeologist, and talked about those investigations. We're continuing to work on the conceptual site model. So this is what we've considered some of that internal work that we're able to push forward without receiving that additional funding. But now this is the big news that we have this year, that we have finally received some exciting funding. And this was, I think, a surprise to me. It was a surprise to the team. We were thrilled to receive this and really glad to be able to share this news with you tonight, that we're going to be able to move forward so much faster on OU2. I'm glad this fell in line with the presentation we were giving so we could give you this updated timeline. So I will pause really quickly here to see if there were any questions on those slides that I covered, because I know I did talk fast.
Beth, I'm not seeing hands up, and my guess is people are going to be interested in this next part. So maybe we'll just keep going and then folks can note your questions.
That sounds great. And I can't see the chat, Ryan. So if you would let me know about that, I will. I think I can see hands, but I can't see the chat right now. So this is the cream of the crop tonight. This is the updated timeline. So you see there are two timelines. I know, Velma, I'm so excited. This was the previous timeline, and I think this is what you'd seen. You saw a slightly different version of this in previous presentations. I know we presented to City Council and the County Commissioners in October of last year with this timeline. So I think this is the most that you've seen, where we were looking at the in-house work, that screening level ecological risk assessment, conceptual site model, groundwater, surface water interaction. So that's what we were expecting to happen this year and next year. Then starting in 2024, we would do surface soil sampling, slag sampling, and then subsurface soil sampling, groundwater monitoring, those feasibility studies where we look at the data that we have and what remedial options would be effective. And then looking for that record decision, which we kind of skipped in here, the public participation process, but that would be kind of this in between line here, and then looking at a record of decision that says, this is what we're going to be doing for Operable Unit 2 in 2029. So I know that's a long timeline, but as we know, we have that additional bipartisan infrastructure funding, which has moved up that timeline by 2 years. So the in-house work, all of this stuff, and I apologize, Eric, you can't see these slides. I know they are on the CAG website, but let me just read them out to make sure we're being as clear as we can. So the in-house work, screening level ecological risk assessment, conceptual site model, and those groundwater surface water interactions are still happening this year and next year. then we are going to see sampling contractor work happening this year and next year so this kind of sampling, surface sampling, slag sampling, and subsurface soil sampling have been moved up. Again, groundwater monitoring and the feasibility studies also moved up. Those are now expected in 24 to 25. Then in 26 and 27, we're looking at finalizing the remedial investigation and the feasibility study, that proposed plan, public comment period, and then a record decision that says what the plan of action will be for Operable Unit 2 in 2027. So that's still not on the same timeline as Operable Unit 1, because that is expecting to finish up next year, but it's faster than we thought. And I think it's great news to see that we will be moving forward on a lot of this sampling this year and next year. That way we can fill in some of those data gaps and really get a bigger picture of Operable Unit 2. So I will pause here because this is really the meat of what we wanted to share tonight.
Thank you, Beth. All right, do folks have questions or comments about this? And granted, people may want to look at this a bit more on your own. Yeah, Terry.
And just to make sure that I'm tracking along correct, Beth, with the revised timeline, we're anticipating we'll be able to get to the ROD in the FY 26-27 period. And that then means that then cleanup will begin after that, if that is the remedial work that's supposed to be done.
Yes, that is correct. I'm nodding, but I know not everyone can see me nod. So yes, you are correct that would be. And Christina, I believe this is calendar year 26 to 27, not fiscal year. Is that right? Maybe.
That would make sense. Okay.
I think so.
I was struggling so hard to get off mute. Yeah, this is calendar year.
Okay. That's what I thought. I struggle with fiscal years, and I know different people have different fiscal years. So thanks, Christina. But yeah, Terry, I think after we have the record decision, Christina, do you have an estimate offhand of when typically construction might be expected to begin? And before I turn to Christina, I did want to emphasize this is an estimated timeline. This is our best guess based on what we know right now. As we just learned, these timelines can change. So we don't want people to come at us with pitchforks in a couple of years if this does change one way or the other. We're hoping it'll stay online with this, but as we know, things do change sometimes.
Yeah, so you had asked when the remedy would be implemented, right, Beth?
Yes, sorry.
I'm assuming, okay. Yeah, so we were thinking that the record of decision would be issued in 2027, and then after that we have the remedial design and then remedial action. And at this point we're not sure what the remedy will be. Obviously the remedial investigation will lead into that, so it's kind of we're planning for 2030 for the remedy complete, but it's something that's adjusted based on the remedy that is selected.
Okay. And Christina, is that I guess between you and Beth, all of this process as we evolve, it will be presented to us, we can track it. And then if we have comments, questions, concerns, we can feed that back into the process as we go.
For sure, yeah. I mean, we're meeting with the CAG, and then I believe, Beth, do you have a couple more slides showing exact community involvement opportunities?
Okay.
Yes.
Yes,
okay.
I do.
So I think Beth will cover that next. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think, Terry, to get to the question that you had, we talked about this last time, and I do want to reemphasize this, that we've talked about how helpful it is for us to hear comments from the CAG before we get to that public comment opportunity, to have those informal dialogues. And that is something we still encourage and we want to see happening. That way we know what's going on as we move forward in this process. I think earlier you did ask, and I flagged this to come back to, of what you all can do to help as we move forward with this speeded up timeline for Operable Unit 2. I think one thing is, it's an annoying ask, but having patience for us as we move forward through this, and I know Christina is going to be really busy getting these actions happening, getting the sampling taking place. So there may be less frequent meetings or less long meeting, something like that, that we may be more focused on trying to get the work done and less time reporting out on it, while still trying to make sure there's enough communication. So having that balance, I guess, of getting the work moving forward and reporting out on it. So having that understanding of our process as we move forward. And the second part of that ask would be communicating with us as we do move forward and we start to think about remedial options in the feasibility study, what sounds good, what doesn't sound good, kind of giving that, as you have been doing, giving that feedback when we are talking to you. I think that's kind of the general ask.
Velma, I think you wanted to chime in on this as well. Go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah. So my questions have sort of turned into confirmations because other folks have been asking the same, but it's at least 5 years before any work would begin in the actual remediation on OU2. Seems like a long time, but on the other hand, it's been there a long time and we've been working on this a long time. So I presume 5 years will fly by, but it just seems like a long time. But at any rate, the second thing is I'm hoping that at least till we really see where we stand with OU2, till we at least get some of that investigation well underway and start getting some results back, that the CAG would remain active fairly regularly, because I think it's way easy for time to pass, interest to lag when we're not hearing about it regularly, and community input therefore to get behind the process. So that's just my thoughts on this subject.
Thanks.
If I could respond real quick. Oh, can I just respond to Velma real quick and then we can go back to Terry? Sorry, I have to interject. But Velma, yes, I think we are looking at remedial action taking place 5 years or more possibly down the line, but at least 5 years down the line. And that is longer than we would want, because we do want to see things. I mean, I think longer than, I speak as the Royal, the CAG, EPA, we would like to get this stuff done quickly, but we also want to be conscientious and make sure we understand the problem thoroughly before we jump to a remedial action. So that is part of it. And I think it's exciting that we are moving along, but I do hear the desire for it to move quickly. And I think we have been hearing that from the community. Thanks for the thumbs up. And now forgetting, asking to make sure that you still get updates. And I didn't mean to say like, oh yeah, so now EPA is operating in a black box and you'll never hear from us. That's not what I was trying to communicate, that it would still be regular communication, but possibly paring back from 2-hour meetings every month, that it might be figuring out a way that works. And I know we still are always going to have the monthly update. So trying to find a way that works to keep people in the loop. And like you said, with the data, I know that's something we are eager to share with people, especially after we've been able to look at it and kind of present trends instead of just like, here's a bunch of raw data. So that's something that I know we've heard from the CAG, and that's good for me to note that is still in interest as we move forward. And I think Christina, to note that's something that you want to hear as we move forward. So just wanted to respond to that. Terry, go ahead.
Yeah, and my comment is just short and sweet. I will second Velma's motion that 5 years just to get to remediation seems like a long time. I just changed seems like to it is. And while I don't mean to sound ungrateful for the amount of money that you've got that has expedited this, we're having this conversation right now with human beings that are alive and excited, and God only knows what will be 8 to 10 years from now about how to reuse this property. And so I'm hoping that as we go, we're definitely want to link in the conversations that we're having on the revitalization side with what we're trying to do on the the work to determine what the problem is and then clean it up, because we may need to try to figure out ways to expedite it otherwise. I've been working in government for a long time. When a development project comes along, you can't turn to a developer and say, we'll get back to you in 8 years. They go elsewhere. And so we're going to want to work on that as hard as we can. But thank you for that. It helps me understand where you're at, what you're doing, and why.
And yeah, Terry, thanks for bringing that up. And we will, at the end of this meeting, be talking about topics to keep in mind for upcoming meetings, and also a chance to do a little bit of planning for CAG discussions and just planning over the next year. So I think thanks for the heads up on that. I know that's a big priority. Christina, I see your hand is up, and Velma, is your hand newly up or is that from before? Okay. Christina, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to explain a little bit about the timeline more in depth and why it might seem like a long time in 5 years. But part of, the different tasks involved can be kind of lengthy. So for example, even just modifying the contract can take between 3 to 4 months, and that's just to get PWT on the ground. And that's just the contracting process that we have to follow. And then we were speaking with them today about how quickly they could get this work done. And what we're giving them for the next 2 years is a huge pile of work. It will involve them scaling up their workforce. It will involve them coordinating with subcontractors to do some of the more like complex work, such as drilling boreholes and installing groundwater monitoring wells. And then another piece, we have the groundwater monitoring, which we're expecting to do for 2 whole years to get that seasonal variation. So that in itself accounts for 2 whole years. And then there's, developing the proposed plan. When we finalize the RIFS, we get public comments on that. We also get public comments on the record of decision. So it does seem long, but I really do think it's squeezing a lot in. So I just wanted to share kind of a few different things that went into the timeline.
Thanks, Christina. Any other, Velma, is your hand, oh, your hand is up. Okay, go ahead, Velma.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up my own comment just real briefly that I realize from my own experience and from that of other community advisory groups that we have a couple of community advisory groups here in Southern Colorado that have had extraordinarily good cooperation with our EPA and CDPHE contacts, and that we get we have a high level of participation, and our input is received and responded to. Not always the way we'd like, but I mean, not always with the answer we're hoping for, but it's a discussion. It's not a dictatorship. So I think that's part of what that's an appreciation and also an expression that I really would like to agree with Beth and everyone, that I would like to see that kind of relationship continue throughout the work on OU2, because I think it's benefited our community, and I think we've come up with better solutions together in the OU1 response with much less what I want to say. Well, it's been a much more cooperative relationship than I know has gone on in some other sites. So.
Thanks, Velma, for that point. And I will echo that. And my sense from everyone I've talked to, including on the EPA and CDPHE side, is that that is also hugely appreciated. And that's something I know that people are very committed to maintaining. So I think that as we talk about CAG meetings and plans to come, that's going to be an important principle, is to maintain that relationship and the collaboration. Okay, other final questions or comments, knowing that, this is a launching off point, not the end of a discussion, as we all know.
Hi, Ryan. This is Eric. I don't have a way to raise my hand.
Yes, thank you for stepping in. Go ahead.
Can you hear me okay? Okay. Yeah, no, yes. I just wanted to say I've been listening to the conversation, and I do agree we need to have as a CAG, we've been very interested on the spots that they're going to pick to do the testing on the groundwater and so forth on OU2. And I think we need to still be involved, and we need to be involved with that process so we can feel right as a community, knowing that where they chose to do some of the test holes and so forth and do it well. I mean, it'd be nice to know where they did it before they did it, because we had questions on the other properties that they've tested along the way through this process in OU1. So, but anyway, I would like to see us have, some real solid involvement in that, because and then we had problems with the air quality tests and so forth. And beyond that, I just want to reiterate that everything that Velma has said tonight, I think you've been on point, Velma, and I second you, and I appreciate you for all the work you put into it. Thank you. That's all that I have to say.
Thank you so much, Eric. And I think your comments are well taken, especially in light of, the conversation about continuing to have a really involved, interactive, productive, collaborative relationship with the CAG weighing in on things that are particularly meaningful to you all. Hey, Eric, can we try a quick experiment? Janine just posted in the chat that she thinks if you press *9, it will raise your hand on the phone. Can you try pressing *9 on your phone just to see if that, oh, look, amazing.
It works.
Janine, you're brilliant. Okay, thank you to
Well,
Janine.
I learned *6 a long time ago.
So *9 raises, *9 is the way to go. Let's try. I'll try to remember to put that in there.
I think *6 is mute and unmute. If I'm
yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
That's
great.
Really
helpful.
Thank you. I wish I would have known that about 10 meetings ago.
But Eric, you're pretty good about stepping in when you at some point. So thank you for inserting yourself. But even better, now we have this info. Christina, I see your hands up too.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a quick update while it was on my mind that related to the groundwater monitoring, is that the work that Sarah and Steve Diamond did when Sarah came to talk about surface water groundwater interactions. They're right now analyzing that data, and they're hoping to be creating a report by the end of next month. So that's potentially something that we could share with the CAG and talk about the results and go through that in the March CAG.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I had a note to ask about something to that effect for the March meeting. So that's great, Christina. Thank you. And Eric, again, thank you for raising the point. Okay, so I want to allow.
I do have 2 more slides, but I think they were repeated slides from last session. This one was just to quickly go through community involvement throughout the remedial investigation of feasibility. I think this is what we spent the bulk of the time talking about last time, that there are constraints on where we can take public feedback into the investigation process, but we do want to keep you in the loop, especially when we start looking at possible remedial options. So I think that's continuing to happen. These CAG meetings are essential for us. And then the last place is just those formal opportunities include the proposed plan to comment on that, continuing to participate in the Colorado Smelter revitalization visioning sessions, and then providing input on institutional controls for Operable Unit 2. Now I'm done, and I will hand it back over to you, Ryan.
Okay. Thank you, Beth. Thanks so much for this presentation. It's available on the CAG website. And I wanted to allow 5 minutes for quick updates, and I apologize if there's not more time for this, but hopefully it will suffice. I think Terry, maybe you and Doug, we're going to just let people know where the institutional controls status of those meetings, what the status is.
Yeah, we've I think that I looked back at the minutes from the last meeting, and what it said we were going to do, we have done, where we've had the various conversations with the local folks, and then we dragged Doug into that. And so I think that what we're ready to do now is to go ahead and schedule the meeting between our little committee, which I think is basically the steering committee, and Doug and anybody else from the state, EPA, and the city. So I think we're ready to schedule that. And I think that the only note that I had down was I was going to try to reach out and have a preliminary conversation with Mayor Gradisar and also with Scott Hobson. I will continue to try to do that, but I don't want to delay it. So I was going to ask if we can get any kind of help to go ahead and get that meeting scheduled now.
Yeah, Ryan, if you could help facilitate that, that would be awesome. I think really just to continue the conversation, see what next steps are, see what action items come out of it. And I think the first meeting, we just kind of went over issues. I think answered some of the questions, but I want to make sure we at least have some answer to all of the questions too. So, yeah.
So my understanding is that you all are suggesting this next meeting be between the subcommittee, the state, meaning Doug, and folks from the city. And so is that what you're saying?
Yes, because that's the full dialogue. We were building up to that point, and I think that we're all ready for that full dialogue and roll up our sleeves and see where the discussions go.
Yeah, I think that sounds right. And I think realistically, the best way to get the folks from the city who you want is probably for you, probably Terry or Doug, to loop those folks into an email, and then I can follow up to actually make it happen. But it's going to have a lot more weight coming from you.
Okay, and I guess what I would suggest is since Doug is paid staff and I'm not, if we could both do it, because then I doubt if I'll do an email, but I would definitely want to contact Scott and Nick as soon as possible. And I've got a million other things to talk to him about as well. So I've got them on my radar screen. It's just I never know for sure when that's going to happen. And if I know that paid staff is actually doing it too, I worry less about my timing.
Well, I'm happy to follow up with the two of you, Terry and Doug, to make this happen. So should we just plan on that?
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Yeah, Terry, who should I engage from the city besides Scott?
I don't know. I think that Scott is a primary point person. I'm sure that he's working with somebody out of the city attorney's office. I'm just not sure who that is. You may have had some conversation with him or not. I don't know.
We've been dealing with our outside counsel. So I'll ask Scott if he wants the city attorney to participate. Of course, they're welcome to, and anyone else that he deems appropriate to participate in that discussion. So
yeah,
that sounds like a good start.
And that's the way I feel about it. If they would like to have the city attorney there, that's fine. I think that a lot of these preliminary conversations are working through the substantive issues, and those issues I think have less to do with a legal issue as some of our negotiating points. But heck, I bring them in. The more, the better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And we'll keep this on the CAG agenda going forward. Janine, you were going to give a quick update on the status of the air monitoring grant.
Happily, good news. And if this is the way we end our meeting, it'd be perfect to have good news. This is about the air monitoring that the community definitely is interested in having there in Pueblo. And this is, I want to start with, this is money coming from the ARP, American Rescue Plan, to help communities, especially disproportionately impacted communities who may need some more help to get some air quality, air monitoring in their communities. So it's been quiet, of course. I think the last time we met was in October, but we hadn't seen the RFA, the request for applications, until December 13th, right before the holidays, right when people are leaving and going off to other places, and it's really hard to get folks together. But we do have it. And our environmental justice program folks, Joel Miner and Natalie Eddy, have been working on a number of things, including reviewing that request for application. But before the RFA, before the request for application was released, they were actually looking at some other communities to see if there was anyone else that would fit this particular grant application. And they've decided that not really. These other communities that would have been interested and might be in line for federal monies to do some air monitoring actually are oil and gas communities, and they're looking more on that spectrum. And frankly, Pueblo is positioned better than any of the other communities that EJ looked at, just because of the community involvement and the local health department's willingness to participate. So right now what we're doing is we're regrouping after the holidays, taking a breath and rolling up our sleeves so that we can get together and start working on a collaborative effort in earnest. So over the next few weeks, we will likely be meeting as much as we can, engage the local community and the state and local health department and the Denver Love My Air program. Now these folks came to one of our meetings virtually. I was going to say came to Pueblo. No, they didn't. We all met virtually, and they talked about some of their resources. So they have some technical savvy. They also have some cost analyses that we can incorporate into our application, and their experience. They've got some other projects around the state, so they know they can offer a lot of tools to this community that we will use and incorporate into that application and try to get some of these funds. It looks like total for this particular chunk of money, we would be vying for a piece of $20 million over the next 3 years. So we're hoping, fingers crossed, that we can pull this together. The application is due February 25th, so we're going to have to hustle a little bit. Let's see, I attended a workshop today about the requirements of this application. That's where I learned about the Star 9. It's interesting because I had never heard that, and here these folks are on the phone and they either have to butt in and interrupt or they just stay quiet, and I don't find that to be inclusive. But now we have a way for them to also participate and get our attention. That's all I really have. We've got another meeting, I think this Thursday, to meet with the community members that are available. And then we will have to report back to the community members that are not available. And I'm sorry to hear Aaron Martinez is ill. He's been instrumental in participating with this whole process. So we will report back to him as well. Any questions?
A note from Velma in the chat that she's also pretty involved in this through Mothers Out Front and others.
Yes.
Which is awesome.
Thank you, Velma. It's true. Awesome. Yep, I'm done.
All right, thank you.
Hey, Ryan, before we go back to that, one other quick thought on the IC discussion. I see that we've still got Wade on. I don't know if Wade would like to weigh in on who else might be involved in the conversation. I was just wondering, Wade, if this might also be a public works issue when it comes to enforcement of institutional controls. And if so, maybe somebody like Andrew Hayes or somebody should be involved in it. The other thought that I just had was, Since what we are proposing is the enforcement element picks up with the building permits, should we at this point, or should we wait till a later point to possibly tie in the city county building department?
Yeah, I think at this point, can you hear me?
Yeah,
We sure can.
I think at this point, still just Scott, the mayor's office, and the attorneys. But I think,
Okay.
you know, that we all talk. It's a small building we're all in, so I think letting Andrew know what's happening. He's been a lot more involved than some other people I've worked with before, so I don't think it's a bad idea to give him updates.
excellent. Wade, thank you. Appreciate it, my friend.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for thinking about us.
You bet.
Thank you, Wade. Okay, I want to wrap, before everyone hops off the phone, I do want to talk about the next meeting, but first we have Dorina, who was going to give an update on the CSRP, the revitalization effort. So Dorina, sorry it's so late, but go ahead.
I will be quick. So the history and art walk is coming along great. We have the wayfinding signs ordered, and we're getting quotes for anchors and poles for the art pieces. We just released the request for proposals, and that was out for about a month. We had 6 applications that were submitted. So 6 potential art pieces that we have to choose from to go along the walk. So we're getting a selection committee together to evaluate those pieces and then choose which ones they want. Also, Lexi, myself, and then the CSRP Coalition have been working with the Pueblo Urban Renewal Authority to make all 3 of these neighborhoods, so the Grove, Eilers, Beaujontown, and Bessemer, an urban renewal district, to really help get some of these projects done and help with funding, and just be able to work in the neighborhoods for a little bit longer. So we will be presenting this to City Council on January 24th, because they ultimately have to approve it. So once they approve it, we can get started on finishing that district. So we're really excited for that, and we're really grateful to be working with Urban Renewal on that project. And I think those are the big updates that I had.
That is so exciting. It's so fun to hear these updates and see so much progressing. Thank you, Dorina. We'll put a link to the CSRP info in the meeting summary as well. And then finally, before everyone hops off, I heard from EPA, because of the new funding and the amount of activity that's happening right now, and that it would actually be really great to meet in March for the next meeting, to skip February, meet in March with some specific updates I think that EPA is already envisioning. So I wanted to just put that out there, that I think the proposal is to meet March. The CAG meeting would be the first Tuesday, March 8th. And included in that would be, ongoing discussions of some of the key things like last call, continuing the discussions from tonight, talking about the plans for the upcoming year for the site as well as the CAG. And then also I think EPA is thinking about following up with the groundwater discussion and some reports on what you all have learned at EPA from the initial work that was done this past year. And so I don't know if there's other things that have been sort of, I think, proposed by EPA, but first of all, I wanted to just see if anyone has anything to say about that from the EPA side that you want to add, but also to suggest a steering committee meeting to help set the agenda and some of your intentions for this. Next Monday, we normally would meet, is Martin Luther King Jr. Day. So I'm hoping that it can be the following Monday at our usual 11 o'clock time, steering committee members, when Erica is normally available as well. So EPA folks, anything to add on that? And steering committee members, thanks Paul for the thumbs up. And can folks just sort of hold, I will send an invite. Just know that I'll send an invite for the Monday after next for a steering committee meeting to discuss goals and intentions for the upcoming CAG meeting.
Yeah, and I'm fine with it. I'm kind of worn out from meetings all day long, so I guess I don't understand why we wouldn't be meeting in February unless nothing's happening in January. But we could hash that over at the steering committee if that's acceptable to everybody.
Yeah, that sounds great.
You're said you'll still put out the summaries of the meeting and all those things will come out.
Yeah, Velma, and we always send out the CAG update, as we call it, that has like the first page with written updates and then the charts of how the progress is going. So we always send that out every month, regardless of whether or not we meet as a CAG. So I would expect and plan to have that still come out every month, regardless. So that'll come out in February.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Velma. Sorry.
I guess I'm not sure why having more activity going on means less need for a meeting. Is sort of I'm sort of echoing Terry's question. Thanks, Terry.
This is Sabrina. I think to add to that question a little bit, and I hear what you're saying is that we're going to have so much going on the administrative side, not so much on the technical side. And so by waiting until March, then we'll know more about the shallow groundwater surface water work and truly have something to bring in March.
And I'll sound like a broken record. Typically, whenever this conversation has come up in the past about skipping meetings, I've usually said, I'm inclined not to say that's a good idea. And the reason is things slip and minds drift. And we've already had a very long delay from the November meeting to January. I'm a little bit uncomfortable about having long times between meetings, and I have never seen a meeting where we don't have a lot to talk about.
And I see a thumbs up from Velma. Sounds like you two are on the same page.
I agree.
Eric
agrees.
Okay, thanks.
And it could be understandable if there were folks from EPA and or CDPAG who were tied up and didn't have a report or didn't necessarily need to be at the meeting.
Yeah, I think this is exactly the kind of thing that we should discuss in terms of given the current landscape, what's realistic and what are ways to meet both your interests as community members who are so engaged and the interests and needs of EPA as you work through this and CDPHE. So I think this is exactly the kind of conversation we need to have, and we'll queue it up with the steering committee. So thank you all for the initial input, and
But if we're not going to have steering committee until like the 24th or so, is that time enough to prepare for a meeting if the feeling of the steering committee is that we need to have one, or should we have like an EPA, an email correspondence about whether or not to have a CAG meeting?
Velma, my suggestion would be, just because I want to make sure Erica can participate, because that's something that she's requested pretty strongly, and I think Mondays are her day, that I think it's hard to do this by email, but I think one possibility is to have meetings where, like you said, not everyone attends, and maybe there's not big things to report. Maybe it's more the administrative stuff that's happening, but maybe they're still interested in having a meeting. So I think there are ways, if people feel strongly, to meet, even without big reports, that EPA has to spend a lot of its time preparing. So I think if it's okay, I would just suggest, let's wait till the 24th. And we can sort of think about options then, and know that I think what you all are doing is weighing in on sort of the CAG schedule, also just generally speaking, here, in addition to possibly a nearer term meeting. So if it's okay, that would be my suggestion. Does that work? Okay. All right. Well, I feel like people need to go eat their dinner. So I'm going to close the meeting. Thank you all so much. Thanks for the wonderful news that from many fronts tonight. It's much needed and appreciated, and take care, everybody. Stay safe.
Thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.